I hope you like your metal filthy and abrasive, because there's not going to be much beauty on this episode. Maybe one thing. Welcome, metalheads. I'm the host of Heavy Metal Philosophy and writer for Metal Digest, JonBarbas. Make sure you stick around to the end of the episode for this week's album art of the week. It's the weekend. That means we got new metal albums dropping on us, and I'm bringing you my 5 favorite. But before we jump into the top 5, as is customary, we always talk about the big releases of the week. So let's do that real quick. Last week, the community seemed a little bit split on that Architects record, so I'm curious to see how everybody reacts to this week's Spirit Box Tsunami Sea. How do we feel about this modern alternative metal? Now, when it comes to core music, this one's going to be a little bit more my speed. The new record from Whitechapel, Hymns in Dissonance. This is that old school deathcore. I'm into it. And speaking of old school, there's a new record from Destruction called Birth of Malice. When we think about OG thrash metal bands, we think about the Bay Area and the Big Four and Testament and Creator. But Destruction has also been around since 1983. Germany had a scene too, and it's good to see the guys still going. And lastly, before we jump into the top 5, there's a new album from The Unguided called Helven. Now, I've started to notice something recently about some of these melodeath / folky metalcore European bands. All their visuals and videos and costumes are starting to look to me like early 2000s Sci-Fi Channel homegrown movies. I wonder why that is. Is that the fashion there recently, or is there like 1 or 2 companies that are doing the visual aspects and the videos for all of these bands? Anybody know? Let me know in the comments. Now let's do the top 5. Coming in at number 5, Reekmind with Mired in the Reek of Grief. This is death metal out of Australia. And y'all know, a lot of times I'm picking some really nerdy albums, if it's progressive, if it's weird, if it's technical. But sometimes I just want a good, solid chug. And that's what this band does. Just pummel me with something simple. And really, I find this more impressive because it's kind of easy to just play something that I haven't heard before and me to be impressed. But if you play chugs, just simple caveman riffs, and it stands out above all the other bands doing it, that's impressive. Really dug this one. If you just want to curl your upper lip in disgust, check out the Reekmind. Coming in at number 4, This Gift is a Curse with Air, Blackened Sludge out of Sweden. This album starts with a bit of feedback before an absolute onslaught of cacophonous noise, and you know right away that this is not going to be a pleasant experience. The guitars have these short melodies that they vamp on, and they never quite seem to resolve. And then the harmonies playing in the background behind those parts, they are so unsettling, they almost sound discordant. Not quite, but just the vibe of it. And the vocals follow a very similar approach. This band is exploring every inch of their inner torment and expressing it out to us. The last song on the record is called Ascension, but you wind up in the abyss somehow, like all life does. And at the end of listening to this record, I just felt empty inside, but not in a bad way. It's like this record named every anxiety I've ever had and thus summoned them out of me and just left me here in a heap. Coming in at number 3, Guiltless with Teeth to Sky, sludgy doom metal out of Seattle, Washington. And this to me sounds like compounding emotions. What do I mean when I say that? Well, imagine you've witnessed something awful and you feel anger at this awful thing. But at the same time, you also feel remorse because perhaps you had some small part to play in it. And at the same time, you feel resignation because this is life now and you have to deal with it. The guitars on this are so sludgy and heavy, they seem to rattle the very air that we breathe. The vocals are a furious bark mixed with a mournful lament. It's like describing the world for your children that you know is going to be awful, and that ball was set in motion generations ago. So the frustration you feel at your own powerlessness, that's the sort of anger and heaviness that I'm feeling from this record. Coming in at number 2, Sculpture with Landkrieg, death metal out of Germany. Now, it might seem a little antithetical to say that a band is true to their genre and also they stand apart from all of their peers, but Sculpture makes the challenging scene pedestrian. And the way they do that is the vocals have that trademark caustic delivery of pure death metal, but the guitars aren't always playing death metal riffs. Sometimes they're playing with atmosphere and they're always building tension. And that tension means when they regress into the caveman riffs, it's like an explosion. It's so heavy. The rhythm section seems to revel in that violence. And in fact, if I wasn't a novice German speaker and I didn't understand what this album was about, the word Landkrieg means land war, I would find this album fun. But because I know what they're talking about, it's a bit disturbing. And that dichotomy, that intersection between finding fun and disturbing commentary in the same place, I love death metal. And hey, before we do number 1, I just got a couple things I want to say to you. First up, last week, if you caught last week's episode, y'all know that I ran an experiment on YouTube's new shopping feature. I didn't know how it worked, so I really needed y'all's help. Thanks everybody that DM'd me and commented. Now I got kind of a little bit better understanding. I will explain more at the end of the episode what I found out and how we can use it maybe. But I don't want to spend too much time on that here because we still got number 1 coming up. Let me just say before we do that we just dropped new merch into the merch store and it will only be available till the end of the summer. So make sure you check it out. Once this design is gone, it is gone. JonBarbas-shop.fourthwall.com. Links in the description. Get you some of this sweet heavy metal philosophy swag. Thank you. Now let's do number 1. All right, after doing all of that harrowing and filthy, sludgy, abrasive metal, y'all know I gotta get nerdy at least once. Coming in at number 1, Dawn of Ouroboros with Bioluminescence, progressive post-black metal, blackened death metal, modern metal out of California. And you know, while a lot of black metal bands, they like to explore the mysteries of the cosmos and the infinite void, Dawn of Ouroboros is saying, yeah, but what's down there in the deep is also alien and inexplicable. And space is, you know, a vast swath of emptiness. Down there is some mystery. You know, the impermanence of life is definitely one of my favorite things to consider, but also the abundance of life in harsh environments is also quite fascinating. And the sound is just like what I'm describing. The sound of this record is just as diverse as the deep ocean. You've got jazzy lounge singer moments. You've got soaring post-metal moments. You've got, you know, growling death metal that's as crushing as the deep ocean. And it just reminds you that there's a lot of beauty there. Beauty that can kill you. All right, for my dealer's choice this week, I've got a good news story to give you about record companies, which is not something that I get to do very often on the Heavy Metal Philosophy podcast, so I'm very happy to bring you this story. The album that I'm picking is Ashen, Rituals of Ash, and keen-eyed metalheads will go, hey, that's a 2023 record, a damn good one, but 2023. And you are correct. It did come out 2 years ago. It was on Bitter Loss Records, and unfortunately that record company has closed. And this is a sad story that I've seen many, many times. Friends of mine have gotten record deals, and then the record company either gets bought out by a bigger company or they get lost in the shuffle and the record's on ice forever, never to be heard again. terrible, terrible stories. But in this case, Redefining Darkness comes in, reissues the record, so we get to continue with this. I mean, they deserve it. Ashen, Rituals of Ash, such a good record. Definitely worth revisiting, and you will hear when you listen to it. Yeah, they definitely deserve it. So big thanks to Redefining Darkness, and I hope that means big things for Ashen in the future. Now let's do the album art of the week. My favorite album art this week comes from Crown Magnetar with their EP, Punishment. Now look at that. I have so many questions about this. First of all, is that a holy woman? I see the regalia behind her head. I see the velvet cloth. This makes me think this is some sort of holy person. And I'm wondering, because of the album title, if she's being punished for some sort of sin. You've got the snake coming out of her mouth. You've got the barbed wire around her forearms. Is that the moon that she's reaching for? Is she in an abyss and this is her last gasp to reach for the light? She's being blinded. I mean, there's so much going on here. I love the oil painting and the color scheme, the mystery, and the crushing deathcore. So go check this one out. Now, as I said before we did number one, I wanted to let y'all know how the experiment went last week. So a lot of you said that nothing showed up on the screen when I said it would. I believe that, but also it's just real small. It's like right here and it's real small, but everything's in the description. And I found something that I want to show you. Oh, check this out. So because none of those things in this feature, none of those companies are actual sponsors, it's just things that I can put in there. I found the protein powder that I actually use. I've been using this protein powder long before I even started this show. And why is it this protein powder in particular that I use? Well, it's because I wanted a whey protein isolate. Isolate was important to me, that had the smallest amount of ingredients possible. So if I look on the ingredient list here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ingredients. Not that big long list of monoglutenated, citrium nitrated, marsupial schmegma, or whatever the hell the other companies are putting in their protein powder. Now, again, they're not sponsoring me. This is just what I actually use, and I found that this is one of the products I can put in there. So if you need some protein powder, I can get you a discount on this. I get a little bitty commission on that. So I'll just put that in there. It's in the description if you want it. That'll support the show. And if you're not a gym bro, don't worry about it. Just like the video if you liked any of these bands. Also, did you like number one, Dawn of Ouroboros? Did you like that? Because if you did, I had them on the podcast last week. Just click right here if you want to check that out. But most importantly, read philosophy, listen to metal. I